As the modern and futuristic shooter continued to garner more and more detractors, stubborn developers often end up hurting their brand more than helping it. With industry trends leaning towards safer options, it's always interesting to see a franchise try something different. Battlefield 1 represents a strong movement to immerse players in pre-modern warfare times, a once oversaturated genre now almost devoid of life. But it's a game that many fans have been waiting for, regardless of which franchise brought it back, and Battlefield 1 knocks it completely out of the park. Battlefield 1's powerful introduction thrusts you into multiple soldiers' positions as each one is overwhelmed at their post. The panic and sense of fear that these opening moments portray is never really captured in any of the game's 5 campaign missions, though each one puts up a solid effort. Each chapter focuses on one soldier working his or her way through a different part of the world, and dealing with issues relative to that area. The chapters are diverse and very different from one another, save for stealth missions that work their way into each story. One will have you piloting a plane and engaging multiple enemies in aerial dogfights, while another will have you acting as a runner to deliver messages to and from various points on the battlefield. Each episode is surprisingly well put together, and from a technical standpoint, the voice acting paired with some stellar animation definitely made an impact during cutscenes.
I thought you liked to bloody well fight!
More importantly, I never felt as though I was forcing my way through any of these episodes, save for one in particular that developed no characters and relegated most of the action to ground-based skirmishes. While arguably the most overlooked aspect of most shooters, the campaign missions in Battlefield 1 offer some truly unforgettable moments, and performances that, at times, feel genuinely human.
Every once in a while, we push hard enough that the light breaks through the clouds, and a world beyond the war glimmers, just out of reach.
Battlefield's multiplayer benefits from the time period immensely, but more importantly, it feels different from nearly every other shooter on the market. Large-scale battles make up the majority of matches, save for 1 or 2 modes like Team Deathmatch, which barricade you into smaller areas as to increase the enemy encounter rate. Battlefield utilizes a class system that assigns your soldier to one of 4 roles, from a sniper touting scout to a medic with the ability to bring fallen soldiers back from the brink. Each gun handles incredibly well, and the reload times never feel like an absolute hindrance. Each class is also equipped with a gas mask for chemical grenades that prohibit players from aiming down the sights of their gun. You're able to gain new weapons and equipment upon leveling up, though the game makes almost no effort to teach you anything about its leveling systems, or even its class's abilities for that matter. And while Battlefield 1's UI could definitely use some work, a few patches have, and hopefully will, continue to make the menus more manageable. Multiplayer emphasizes both teamwork and strategy, and this sense of camaraderie is nowhere more evident than in Battlefield 1's 2 premier modes, Conquest and Operations. Conquest is the classic way of playing Battlefield, tasking players with capturing various control points spread across a gigantic map. Holding an area gives you and your comrades a few advantages, mainly supplying your team with more points to ultimately win the round. The more control points you hold, the higher your score will climb. This also gives you and your team another spawn point on the map, and some areas grant access to different vehicles, including planes and tanks that can hold multiple passengers. Multiplayer's main draw is no doubt the number of players combined with the size of each map. An average game holds 64 soldiers vying for team control over sections of each area, and Battlefield's maps truly make you feel that you're playing a small part in a larger struggle. It's incredible to take control of a point with your teammates, only to gaze across the map and see other soldiers fighting to gain the upper hand in another area. Vehicles give your team a distinct presence on the battlefield, as tanks and planes can roll in to deal massive damage to an area, while simultaneously being fairly difficult to take out. They're also a heavy deterrent for those looking to go lone wolf, as taking them down single-handedly can be nearly impossible. Coupled with the fact that players can spawn on captured points nearly instantaneously, going solo usually ends in a quick death with little payoff. This can be a bit frustrating if you're noticing attack patterns that your team isn't, and try capturing a solitary point on your own. Doing so will prompt a swift response from the opposition, who can spawn in near your location as soon as they see you're attempting to capture it, as you need to fully deplete your enemy's influence over the area before they are no longer able to make use of it as a spawning location.
An enemy dreadnought is en route.
Multiplayer's great equalizers come in the form of behemoths, one of 3 vehicles that enter the battlefield to help tip the scales in favor of the losing team. Players can spawn inside of these vehicles, which take the form of a zeppelin, armored train, and dreadnought battleship, with each one capable of dealing massive amounts of damage and requiring significant firepower to take down. The airship in particular is an explosive spectacle, literally falling from the sky and crushing houses with its hulking metal frame once destroyed. Battlefield's newest mode, Operations, is an entirely different beast, but holds true to the atmosphere of World War I, as the battles themselves are designed to be historically accurate.
The defeat of Russia in the east allowed Germany to concentrate its forces for one massive assault on the British sectors. The initial hurricane bombardment was heard as far away as London.
One team's job is to capture a certain amount of points in a given area, while the other attempts to hold their ground. If the defending team is overrun, they're pushed back and repeat the process in a more fortified area. If the attackers fail to capture the enemy's control points with the limited amount of respawns they're allotted, they're given a second chance with the Behemoth as backup. These 2 modes, Conquest and Operations, emphasize one of Battlefield 1's biggest strengths, the fact that you aren't fighting opposition for the sake of a kill count. Multiple times I found myself picking off enemy forces not because I wanted to increase in rank, but because they were attempting to overrun a control point, and joining my teammates to keep that territory secure was a priority. And that's what makes Battlefield 1's multiplayer so special. When you fight well together, you can see that difference on the battlefield. It's unfortunate, then, that the load times to get into each match can be unbearably long, bordering on 2 full minutes of inactivity. Couple that with the fact that there's no ability to customize your loadout on these screens at the time of this review, it's an agonizingly long wait. The developers also fixed by far one of the biggest grievances at launch, the inability to leave a match after a few seconds had passed on the post-game screen. This meant you had to wait for another 2 to 3 minutes before the next match started, and you could quit proper. Considering the number of players Battlefield 1 has amassed, the massive number of post-launch patches is definitely welcome, but the developers should take note of such fixes for future installments. You've been watching this review, so by now you've probably realized that Battlefield 1's visuals are simply on another level. For how enormous each map is, the striking level of detail is unprecedented. From the rust on the sniper's gun to the dynamic weather effects, the visuals aren't the only thing that set Battlefield 1 apart. Its sound design is at the top of the class, a cacophony of explosions, planes, and gunfire, punctuated with soldiers pointing out enemy positions as shell casings audibly eject from each gun chamber. Needless to say, even when you're trotting to your objective, Battlefield 1's overall presentation ensures that there's never a dull moment. A few user interface issues don't detract from Battlefield 1's attention to detail and chaotic multiplayer component. Longevity is certainly an issue with games like these, but the franchise has undoubtedly taken a step in the right direction. Battlefield 1 offers something different, balancing that feeling of new and old so perfectly that it's hard to put down once you find your footing. If you've got the time and the money, this is one shooter that delivers on all fronts.
We are the jaded, and we are the naive. We are the honorable and the criminal. We are the bound for legend and the lost to history. We are the knights of the sky, the ghosts in the desert, and the rats in the mud. These are our our stories.